You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Darryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for the show, and we are finally on. We apologize for the late start of the stream. We just had a few technical issues that we had to work through, but fortunately, that's okay. I appreciate your patience, because I'm sitting here, like, freaking out, going, oh, man, these guys are, like, waiting for us, and, you know, and then I was redoing some things with this actual show. Actually, I was rebuilding a bunch of elements, so I thought, oh man, something happened. But we're here, and we're ready to talk the Acolyte. So, yeah, now this one, I thought it was a step down from the last episode. But even though, you know, again, look, with the Acolyte, you got to build in. There's a lot of problems with this show. There's a lot of problems. But I will say this. Unlike some of the earlier episodes, I'm starting to get more absorbed in the general story, so I'm finding myself, even though I'm aware of the issues, I'm starting to overlook them a little bit. Because I'm like, okay, I'm somewhat invested in some of the stuff. I mean, obviously, look, the last episode, well, I don't necessarily think it was an anomaly. You know, this episode I thought suffered a little bit from some of the, the traditional stuff that's been happening, some of the poor writing choices and things like that. But story-wise, overall, I was like, okay, I'm invested in it, but still, this just isn't the show that they promised us. You know what? Because the whole thing with Kamir and Osha and all that stuff, I thought, okay, this is a little bit more like what we were promised. Stuff from the Sith perspective of things.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, what are we on, like episode 6, and they're finally starting to deliver that stuff? I mean, that's the only problem. But then again, the whole murder mystery leading into the discovery of Kamir and everything, it's like, okay, if you just told me this on paper, I'd be all about it. It's just that it's been a little bit rocky in, how they've been able to deliver this.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. And the only saving grace I'm going to give them is that maybe this is just a setup so they can kind of explain it more in season 2 or something like that. You kind of have to set the stage for it. And then, because it's like, all right, we have to figure out, like, I guess this is like how like in the James Bond movie, they'll start off with a chase scene generally, or some sort of action scene, and then you get into the, like, what is Spectre up to this time, So I feel like this is kind of what's happening. It's like we've had the action stuff that kind of like is kind of setting the tone for now. We're now starting to get into the story of the why this is happening. And I think this is going to maybe, hopefully, if there is a season 2, that this is going to be fleshed out there.
Well, I think there will be a season 2. I mean, because miraculously, as many of the fans that have had problems with this show, and as much as we've gone back and forth in somewhat bashing it, and then also praising it in some cases too, this is like the second most watched Disney Plus show. It's behind only Obi-Wan Kenobi, which really surprised me because I thought The Mandalorian held that title, but it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So, in spite of what the vocal segment of the fan base thinks, I mean, this episode, or this series rather, is wildly popular. So, I think we are gonna see a season 2. I was watching an interview with Leslie Headland recently. I was actually reading some stuff, and she essentially confirms that Kamir is a Sith, and she also talks about a lot of her plans for season 2, which does seem to lend herself to that. She was explaining, for instance, the difference between Vernestra Rwoh, as we see her in The Acolyte, and then what a lot of us fans have seen her in the book, right? Because in the book, she was a little bit more rambunctious, and, she was a lot younger, too. And, there was a lot of different elements that she was trying to illustrate with her character in particular, and then also talking about how in the next season she plans to bring yet another Jedi from the books, into this thing. So it seems like, she's creating a bunch of these High Republic characters, but then she's also, at least, I don't know, how many seasons she plans to go with this thing, but like she's going to bring one actual established High Republic character in each season, it looks like.
Okay. I mean, that's cool and all. I think just looking at episode 6, the execution just has to get better.
Yeah.
With a lot of things. And the acting has to get, definitely has to come up. Some of the things about this, I did like, Camille's little, it looks like they're on Octo. That's what's funny. Like,
I know, it does totally look like that, doesn't it?
And it looks like, those, because they saw like it looks like the little like baby versions of those.
The Porg, yeah.
No, not the Porg.
Oh, the caretakers, yeah.
The caretakers of Octo,
Maybe. Because they did, they seem familiar, right? And it is 70 years before, well, actually, it's like 100 years before Force Awakens or Last Jedi, so.
Yeah.
Yeah?
So, yeah, so I'm feeling like, we've been here before. I do like his little Batcave thing that he has there, that's kind of cool. We definitely did get the whole the Cortosis.
Yeah, the Cortosis thing, he actually name-checked it. So I thought that was pretty nice that, that ended if there was any doubt before that that's what it actually was, he name-checked it. So, that part was pretty cool, too. But speaking of this whole thing, the most intriguing thing to me was when, he was like
naked.
Oh man, yeah, that's
right.
That's a trend that's coming into Star Wars. It started with the whole Kylo Ren thing.
Kylo Ren, yep.
Yeah,
exactly. I was just like, now he's fully nude. He's walking around. OSHA's all like trying not to. I'm just kind of like, come on, people.
Well, I guess she's not gay.
Well, she might be because or
maybe she's bi.
Or she just doesn't care, she might have other things on her mind at the moment.
Kind of wants to grab that other lightsaber hilt, if you will.
Or maybe she doesn't. It's, he was in the water, could be cold. Never mind.
That was one of those things where I was just like, really, dude, this is where we're going.
Right.
It just, once again, it's one of those things where I think it is a little bit jarring and it takes you out of Star Wars. See, Lucas didn't need to do any of that stuff.
Right.
But in that scene, though, because I think it was part of the same scene, because one of the things I really did like about this episode was anytime they had conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they would talk back and forth, and I enjoy that for really on any of the franchise stuff, whether it's the comics or the novels or movies, TV, whatever, when they start actually discussing these things, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that it was especially cool with this because this is where the show is delivering what it promised. It is giving us some things from the more of the Sith perspective. But the most intriguing line to me was when they were talking about, that he used to be a Jedi or whatever, and he started going, no, a really long time ago. Like, almost implying that he's, like, way older than what he looks, or... Because, you got to think about it. She was in the Jedi Order or whatever, like, 16 years ago. And you figure 16 years prior to that, right? Like, obviously, she's probably heard of a lot of the different Jedi. So the fact that she's never heard of him and he's saying, no, like a really long time ago, it's like, well, what are you implying? How old are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it going to be, are we going to find out that, he's, and who knows? Maybe that's not even his real form. They could go anywhere with that. Or, or maybe he's using the dark side to keep himself youthful and beefcakey so he can take
Yeah.
baths and turn on young Jedi Padawan girls or something. I don't know. I mean,
I do like what I do really enjoy though is his level of confidence though. Like, that's
well,
one
he's
thing
a
I do
cool
love about his
character.
character.
He's actually a very cool character. I agree. I mean, I don't know, he's different than any of the other Sith-like or Sith that we've seen.
Yeah. Like he's the fact that he knew she was there the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
He still chose to get, completely stripped down there. And it's once again, it's almost like a show of power. Like I can be you know,
Like
basically
really
my giant
vulnerable.
tub, really, really, really vulnerable, and like I'm still not vulnerable,
Right.
and that's
Like even though you're holding my lightsaber basically, and I'm
and
completely
I'm
nude and
butt
unarmed.
naked. Yeah, yeah.
It's like
I literally have nothing.
I still
I'm
have
still
the
more,
advantage. Yes.
yeah, I'm still more powerful than you. So
Mm-hmm.
you
No,
don't
I
pose a
thought
threat
that
to
was
me.
yeah, I thought that was pretty that was not only was that cool, but just see the way they're handling the OSHA thing, I kind of like. The May thing, the problem that I have with that, and this is where I think the writing is just it's not even lazy, it's just bad. It's like her motivations keep changing. It's almost like she's schizo. On one hand, she's talking about how she's going to turn herself in and she's going to warn the Jedi about all this. And, then the next thing you know, and this is episode 5, of course, then she's trying to kill them. Then she comes on. It's almost like her motivation is just, it doesn't make sense according to, what they're trying to portray. It's like, I don't know. It's poorly written, in my opinion.
Yeah, with May, it seems like she's trying to stay off. Like you said, she originally wanted to turn herself in. Now, when you have Vanestra and everybody else trying to come up, it's like, okay, now I got to get out of here, type thing. So, well, no, that was actually Soul. Soul actually was running away from Vanestra, and that's curious as well. Like he has some
Yeah,
darkness to, and that's
there's something. Well, from what I understand, the next episode we're finally going to figure out what happened to the whole like witch thing, right? Like what really went down, because what we had speculated before, if you remember, was we talked about, okay, why did Torben kill himself? Like it just doesn't, from everything that we've seen, it's like, all right, why such a reaction? Something else went down that we're not privy to as the audience yet. And that's where I think that they're doing a fairly good job of maintaining the mystery. Because again, one of the things that I've long said is like, look, I can separate myself from the critical part of me to the, little kid wanting to be in this universe part of me. As long as the story is captivating, you can execute it crappily and I'll still be on board with it because it's the story that I'm looking for, right? And that's sort of what's happening here in a lot of ways. But that's the part that's intriguing to me, because I agree. I think there's something more than meets the eye, because why is Soul acting so strange?
Yeah. And I hate to, and I'm wondering, did little Basil, tip him off that's not
I think so. I mean,
OSHA, or did he know himself? And
that whole scene was so
just
stupid too. That he's like gonna fight her, and then the little droid squirts oil on her.
Yeah,
It's just like,
once again, you know what? It was like that Ratatouille scene in Book of Boba
just
Fett.
about to say that. I was just about to say that's exactly what that reminded me of. And it's like, I get what they were going for, but it just, again, it takes you out of it. It's like, you got to decide what kind of show you want to be. If you want to be this more adult, dark, it's like we're going from this one scene where, like in the last episode, it got a little bit violent and dark. This episode, you're getting pretty overtly sexual with it, and then you're turning it into like this little Muppet type kid scene over it. It's like you got to figure out what kind of show you want to be. Because
Yeah.
if you think about that in the tone of what it is, you can look at something like The Force Awakens. When J.J. Abrams would drop those things in, like, when BB-8 lights his little lighter or to give a thumbs up or whatever, like the little sort of campy things that they did which was very Star Wars. Tonally, it fit the film.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was some dark scenes in it. There was some lighter stuff in it. Again, it was done well. This is not done well. This is like a hodgepodge of different feels and different scenes, and there's nothing really uniting all this. You know what I mean? It's like you could tell what the overall story is, but I mean, at the same time,
it's a collage. It's not.
Yeah, exactly. It's not
a mosaic piece.
Yeah, or like a compilation or something.
Piece, yeah, like a mosaic kind of reveals a big picture type thing. Where this is just like, here's a bunch of my random thoughts. It's like a weird.
Well, that's basically what it is. That's why I stopped. I actually stopped taking notes because I wanted the conversation even to be a little bit more stream of consciousness, to just,
like
we
normally would have.
Yeah, like what we would normally have. I mean, when you and I are talking Star Wars, I don't come up with like notes on my phone
PDF.
And go, yeah, how about the part where, you know what I mean? It's like, no, we just start talking about it. And I just started realizing that I think I was getting us a little bit tonally away from our show by doing that. I mean, it's one thing to maybe jot down a few things that you don't want to forget, but I was getting to the point where I was writing like practically like a little essay or dissertation on the thing.
You're going to get your doctorate. It's like a whole thesis.
Oh, if only. I wish.
Right. We couldn't use it anywhere, but it would be cool to have.
I know, right? It would be. But you know what I'm saying? It's like it's just
mythology.
Yes. But I mean, there's just like a lot of different elements like that would just take you out of it. I mean, I know what they were going for, and absolutely, I think Basil was the one because they were making a big deal. Now, again, it might have been just a poorly written thing. Because first of all, I think it's pretty bad that these Jedi can't sense this stuff.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I keep bringing it up almost like every week. Like, this is supposed to be the high time of the Jedi, and it's like, I'm not seeing it. I'm just not. It's just, we've seen some pretty cool, like, okay, Torben, floating for eternity. Okay, he's got a force field around him.
Well, there's some power stuff. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, power
as far as
stuff,
the power stuff that they're showing, I was glad that they finally brought the light whip into live action too, because that's something that's been floating around for a long time, since Legends. And I liked it. I thought it was done well. It wasn't overused. It made sense. It wasn't like that really weird, like, lightsaber umbrella thing that was in Visions.
Oh, right.
Where you're like, how does this thing even work? Like, this is one of those things that you're doing just because somebody said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, and you decide to put it in there. This is actually a practical thing. Now, Doug, of course, had some interesting, because he texted me, I don't know, a couple of days ago, and, he was like, so a light whip, because, he's just kind of like seeing all kinds of disastrous things that a light whip, but I had to tell him, like, listen, that's something that actually, this is not some stupid, crazy thing that they came up with. This is something that has actually existed and has some basis in canon. Because it was both in Legends and canon.
But I think it's kind of a stupid weapon for a Jedi to have.
Well, I will admit,
I could see like a maybe a dark side user, maybe that's not a Sith, or maybe some criminal or something like that, like from a gang or something like that. But to me, a light whip in a lightsaber battle, I mean, it just doesn't seem practical.
Well, maybe this is the archaeology part that they were talking about, right? They wanted to bring a little Indiana Jones into
Indiana
this.
Jones, yeah, right.
No, it actually works. It works, but you have to write it well. See, that's the problem. Like, if you were to read some of the Legends books, or even, I forgot what new canon, there was a new canon book that actually had it in there too, where they did fight with it. And again, I mean, it is one thing to write and describe these things. It's another thing to actually show it. But regardless of that, if it's written well, it makes sense. But I don't, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just one of those things where I think that it was nice to see because it was a little bit of a fan service thing, but I thought that it was okay. David says, "Hello, gentlemen. It's Star Wars Day. Yes, it is. Every
Yeah.
day is Star Wars
And
Day here."
well, you know what? And it's funny that I'm glad David's with us because he brought up a good question. Well, not a question, but a comment, off camera. He called me. He was kind of like, was talking about the fighting. When you were talking about consistency, like, okay, 1 minute they want to be sexual, next minute they want to be kid friendly, the next minute they want to be dark, like they're all over the place. And he brought up a point that I didn't consider, because initially on the first couple episodes, it was that crouching tiger, hidden dragon style of, they're floating in the air and doing all this
Hmm.
stuff. But then now when you look at the fighting, it's more grounded in reality. So it's kind of like, okay, well, which one are we doing? Or, is it, because it seems like they've abandoned that
That's a
for a
good
more
point.
realistic Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I
Yeah,
never, really
because
paid
one of
attention
the
to it,
things that
but it's
both of
very
us
valid.
enjoyed, I think it was the last episode was
Hmm.
the whole battles and the lightsaber battles were just incredible, but also the hand-to-hand combat. It was a lot
Yeah.
cooler. It lived up more to what I expected the show to be. Because we
Hmm.
knew that there was going to be hand-to-hand combat in it, but we weren't sure. But it was like, because I remember when the first two episodes dropped, I was like, all right, it's okay, it's got potential. And you're like, okay, this is like a live action Visions to me, right? So,
Yep.
but and then of course by episode 3, that was when both of our opinions started to more or less align, and we had the same problems with the show and we liked the same things. But I remember that with episodes 1 and 2 in particular, that was one of the things where you had the big problem,
Hmm.
the biggest problem.
Yeah.
And I thought that they fixed that with the way they did the hand-to-hand combat in the last episode.
Yeah. It was much better.
Much better. But
Much, much better.
it is a good point though. Now, the only thing that I could say that, because this is what we do as Star Wars fans, right? We have to make up excuses for everything. And usually we try to do, the in-universe version is we try to like describe certain things that within the world, and then other times, we'll point to things outside of the world, right? The in-universe explanation for that, though, would be, you got to remember, there's like a gazillion High Republic Jedi. And
Hmm.
one of the things that makes this time period a little bit unique in the whole Star Wars timeline is that you didn't necessarily have this like aligned dogmatic version of the Force and how it's used. Like everybody was allowed freedom of expression. It was sort of like an artist community in that sense.
Hmm.
Everybody could sort of express the Force. I mean, you couldn't go to the dark side, obviously, but I mean, as far as how you personally express the Force in some of your strengths, like with, of our Chris, how it's kind of like a song to her and she, senses it almost in a musical sense. There's all kinds of stuff like that. And you could almost say that depending on, and the only thing that would negate that is some of the Jedi that we saw in episodes 1 and 2 that were doing the whole crouching tiger, hidden dragon thing were some of the same ones that we saw in this different hand-to-hand combat. Because
Hmm.
the in-universe explanation would be, well, it was like a different set of Jedi, and that's how they, they did more of
Fight, or
that
that's their
floaty.
style,
Yeah,
or
that's more like their style. And then you had this set, which employs more of a grounded sense.
hmm
That's. Let me get this one in from Voyager. Uh, he says, "Wait, Eric, have you read High Republic stuff?" Yes, I have.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. In fact, there was the entire first run of comics. They said they were only going to do like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 issues or something, and it went way further than that. But I read all those.
Hmm.
I read about 2 or 3 of the novels at least. So yeah, that was one of the reasons why I was really super excited about this show. Was because
Hmm.
one of the things that a lot of people sort of slept on was the fact that it was going to take place during the High Republic era, which this
Yep.
represents the first live action series or
Depiction. Yeah.
anything really. Yeah, depiction or anything for the High Republic era to, mixed results. That's the best way that I can put it. Like I said, I mean, I didn't hate this episode by any stretch. There was actually a lot, I sort of feel about this episode maybe the way I felt about, like, I don't know, episode 4 or something, where like, all right, there's some there's some problems. There's some problems that, because it's funny, like there's this one guy on well, it's now X, right? Twitter, that he was one of the people that was one of our early viewers, listeners. Like he was actually listening to us when we were an audio only podcast. And I notice he hasn't been promoting us like he used to. And it's funny because he's just gone on this whole crusade about, the whole toxic fan base and the Acolyte is great. And why would people, it's almost like he's like really deep into the whole Acolyte thing. And it's kind of one of those agree to disagree things, but he just, I'm just like, dude, I mean, I get it, but this is not the series this is not the fight you want to get into. I mean, it's a poorly written, executed series in a lot of cases. Now, it has flashes of brilliance. Like, it'll have good things about it. And
I was just about to ask you, like, what did you like about this particular episode?
Well, I mean, I like the whole. So when you get into the whole Kamir and Osha thing, I really like that. I really thought that was pretty well done. Again, I mean, because even within the people that agree that this series is a little spotty and it's not that greatly executed or whatever, there's people that will find even, like, I think that I'm sort of a little off center on this, right? Like, I don't really hate the series, but I don't love it either. But I think that I can overlook a lot of these things because, again, I see where the story is going, and I actually enjoy the story part of it, that I can go, okay, that wasn't handled well. There's not a whole lot that really takes me completely out. I mean, sure, when Kelnaka kept looking more like the Harry and the Hendersons thing, especially that final episode he was in, I'm like, okay, now I'm having issues. But I like the Osha Kamir thing. I liked elements of the Soul and May thing. I like some of the action scenes. I like the overall vibe. But again, I would be remiss if I didn't point out the fact that this could have been so much better if it were written better and it were executed better.
Yeah. I mean, I think, for me, I enjoy like you said, the dialogue. I like getting the information as, why are we here? Like, okay, give me more of the content. And, when, she wakes up in his little lair as he's like welding his helmet back together. I did enjoy, that. I love, like I said, just Kamir, his calm demeanor. He gives me very, like, Palpatine, like, just in the sense of the way how he talks to her. Like, he's not in a rush to have her like a Kylo type thing where Kylo just always seems
he
right,
was
like,
so intense
he's
all the
so
time.
intense and anxious. That's the way you would describe Kylo. Kamir is very kind of like, he's poking holes in her ideology of things, and eventually she's going to realize that the bottom is going to fall out, and that's kind of like his style, and I like that because, once again, he's like that quarterback. I'm leading you where I want you to go.
Yep.
I'm not throwing directly at you, coming at you direct, like, all right, it's more like, all right, I'm gonna throw the ball here. By the time you turn, it should be there, and you'll be fully mine, essentially. And that's Palpatine. He plays the long game, and he's kind of telling her like, well, if you want to leave, you better hurry up before the tide comes in. The ship is over there. I mean, do what
Well,
you
what
want,
he's
but
doing is he knows she's curious. And
exactly,
he's
exactly.
playing that, it's kind of like, yeah, I know you're not
Exactly.
gonna, yeah, there's your ship. You better, tide's coming in. You better. He knows full well she's
Hmm.
not going to.
Yeah, it's that, and he's like the bad boy that's attracting the good girl,
Yep.
and
Oh man, yes.
there's the allure of like, okay, I know I shouldn't, but I'm so curious as to what you are and why are you like this, and I have to find out more. And it's like the more, and that's exactly what he wants you to do, because now it's going to consume you. Your curiosity is going to, it's a
If you think
typical
about it,
like.
I mean, this is kind of weird because this
Mhm.
just popped into my head. Every Sith has always gotten his women by being naked or shirtless. You think of Anakin back like in episode 3, he was all like shirtless, like Padme.
Well, he had Padme back in two,
Mm-hmm.
but I think he was shirtless then too.
Yeah, well, he definitely wasn't. Because, yeah, he had that one dream.
Yeah.
Because they always got to show, like, the whole Peck thing, right? Then you had, of course,
Hmm.
Kylo. As soon as
Yep.
he's appearing to Rey like that, now she's starting to be, oh, yeah, okay. But all kidding aside, though, I mean, you're right. It's more like this slow seduction. Very much the way that
That
Palpatine handled Anakin. He
exactly.
started picking it at things like, okay, I know that these are the things that are going to spark your curiosity and
Hmm.
draw you to me, and I don't even have to try. You're going to just naturally.
You're gonna,
Yep.
come over to, it's the typical Adam and Eve and the serpent thing. It's
Mhm.
like, okay, I have this shiny piece of fruit here that you're not supposed to touch, but you're curious about why you can't touch it.
Yeah, and then
And
altering different things like, kind of, are you sure? Well, I mean,
yeah.
and that's basically what he's doing is he's kind of flipping the script a little bit
Hmm.
and trying to show some of the weaknesses. Now in the Leslie Headland interview, another thing that was happening during that time, she's talking about how she and I it's funny too because it's almost like when you used to watch like Behind the Music or something. It's like it put the artist's catalog in a different light, so then you went out and bought
Hmm.
all their albums or
Yep.
whatever because now you're listening to it more
From a
from
different
yeah, from a
perspective.
different perspective because you understand what they were going for, and so therefore now you find more enjoyment in it. And that's
Hmm.
sort of what's happening when I'm listening to her talk and I understand what she's going for. Like, for example, she's talking about, she was trying to, I can't remember exactly who it was, but she was trying to show how some of these High Republic Jedi are starting to become more like what you would see in the prequels and how that's kind of the beginning of their downfall, kind of a thing. Let me get this thing from Voyager. He says, I feel Osha needed to try and escape at least just once. He kidnapped her after all. She seemed way too calm about it. I think part of the reason for that, though, is because he did and he didn't. Because if you remember, it was May that basically, pushed her, knocked her out, or whatever. And I'll tell you what that reminded me of. This is going to be really strange. It reminded me of the opening of Halloween 5.
Mm.
That was
I
when,
gotta remember.
Michael Myers was rescued by that one guy and he was like recuperating. Now, of course, Michael eventually kills him. But the thing is that, he finds Michael Myers. He kind of bandages up his wounds or something and takes care of him for a year. And
Oh yeah.
that's sort of what Kamir was doing. You didn't really kidnap her. He basically just bound up her
Rescued
wounds
her.
and rescued her and, took her back and cuz she was never any kind of a prisoner really. I mean, she even said that like, "Oh, I'm your prisoner." Like, "No, you're not my prisoner."
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, like, once again, like the seduction of him because it's like, all right, I'm like, I just tried to more or less almost kill you, but I'm saving you at the same time.
Well, and she's also seeing like his more softer,
Tender side, right?
type of side where, and now he's giving his reasonings behind things. And of course, as an
Hmm.
audience, we're learning that too. We're learning
Yeah,
more about his motivations.
he's giving her the it's not personal, it's business
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And so now she's like, look, I don't have anything against you. I have issues with the Jedi. That's my issue. I would love to actually have you with me because I think you would understand why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not as this monster that you think that I am. Because every villain thinks that they're the hero. So it's kind of like I'm bandaging up your wounds, I'm taking care of you. And it's funny because he puts her in situations where it's seemingly like she's has freedom or choice in a matter. But if you gotta think about it, it's like, okay, if you really cared, you would have provided her a way to just get to the ship and so she can fly once she was better. But you didn't. You got to she's got to work for that. Like she's got to work to swim across this ocean to get to the platform just to get onto the ship. Like if he was really truly being noble about it and trying to be a good guy, a good person, he would just had a boat that can go over there or, you know, even just took care of her on that platform over there and just so when she was ready and healed, she could just fly off. But he didn't. It's because he still wants her to make a choice. He still wants to have one hand around um her decision. And I think that's just the beautiful dance that he's doing with her because he has all this experience because he's older than her.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple of different things that are going on. I mean, number one, it's the age-old thing, right? The Jedi are the ones that they have this dogmatic way of looking at the Force, and if you don't use the Force the way they think you should use it, then you're automatically a villain. That's basically the card
Hmm.
that he's playing. And I mean, the other thing, too, is that he's trying to, obviously, it's like, okay, the May thing didn't work out so well. Maybe I can get this chick to do something or whatever. But I mean,
Hmm.
it's funny when you look at the way that he did things, right? Like, even with May's thing, he got himself like in that trap, to
Hmm.
see what she would do. Like, it's the way that he's testing her is more aloof, I think, in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. So David says, another horrible episode. It was Star Wars only fans. It's
He meant
good.
it exactly how you said it. I
I
can tell
know.
you that right
I
now.
know. I know. I know. He should have capitalized the O and the F.
Only
I think
fan.
that would have sold
Yeah.
it a little bit, but yes. The seduction was so unnecessary and out of nowhere. We did cover that earlier. Also, I noticed that Osha really can't act. She makes no facial expressions at all. Well, what was the other thing that she was in? She actually this is the thing that this is why I feel sorry for actors actually. So sometimes you do get actors that they have enough clout that they can basically say, okay, this is what I think this character should do. And a lot of times you'll get a good actor that will do the best they can with poor direction and a bad script, right? And so you'll often see the reviews
Hmm.
of, so and so basically as good as they are, they're not even enough to lift up this terrible script. In this case, I think a lot of it's in the direction. I don't really think it's in the acting.
Hmm.
And and this is something that's been common with Star Wars. I mean, even Lucas, right? Lucas is notoriously mostly miss. You could say he's hit and miss. You can't say that he's a terrible director because he did direct episode 4, but
Hmm.
he's not an actor's director at all. He's the guy who's
All
just
right.
like, I don't know, just, say the lines, right? He's like,
Mm.
he's not really a director per se. He's more of a technical director than like a director, what we would think of, right? To bring out the best
Right.
performance in an actor. And unfortunately, I think what's happening is look at episode 1. You had Liam Neeson, Natalie Portman. You're talking a bunch of Oscar-nominated or Oscar-winning actors.
Ian McDermott is
Ian
that's being
McDermott, and he was
you
the only
know,
one. And most of the dialogue, it was wooden, it was stilted, it was stiff, and this is the way I think that they're just being directed. They're just, look, you got to give the director what they want. It's their project,
mm-hmm.
And that's just
Yeah.
how it's coming across. So you can't, I'm not saying that that's always the case, because sometimes you do, but I don't really think in a lot of Star Wars projects anyway that the acting is really the problem. I think it's really more the direction.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times that is the case. Is that if you have a director, and that's the thing, it's Leslie is not even directing most of these
I know.
episodes,
Which
so
I
she's the
find
executive
really
producer.
strange, actually,
Mm-hmm.
because she
And they're not even
directed
all
like
written by
Russian
her.
Doll. I mean, she's.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like she isn't a director, right? Like, you can understand if like Lawrence Kasdan had his own show. Okay, he's a writer. He's not going to direct it, obviously. But it's really weird that
makes me think about something. Maybe they're going about it. I mean, well, obviously they're going about it the wrong way, but like,
well, I don't know. It's the second most popular show that they've ever produced on Disney Plus. So
I think they're trying to make movie directors a series director.
well, you could do that if you're doing it, because if you think about it, it's not like when we were growing up where there was a definite, divide between movies and television. In fact, back then, if your career was over if you went to television, right? Like, film was where it was at. You had all these actors that were on television. Film was where they wanted to go, because that's the prestige. And
Mm-hmm.
a film actor would almost never go on a TV show. That was like beneath them. But then sometime in around the early 2000s and on, it changed, where you started getting these television shows that were cinematic, actually, and they're almost like, episodic films in a sense.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the way you have to. I mean, I get it. It's kind of like it's a continuous story all the way through. However, what I'm saying is that you have these different directors who are film, and but you also they're kind of managing um other directors who may not have this. So, like, case in point, Leslie Headland. Okay, she's a film director, and she directed, I think, maybe the first episode, which ironically it's terrible. But
Maybe you should be thankful she didn't direct any more than that,
I
right?
mean, man, yeah, maybe, yeah, possibly. Maybe I should right now, but but then you start looking at like all the other directors and other writers, and it's like, okay, you don't know exactly where they land. Are they like, just getting out of film school? Like, I don't know. So it's kind of weird. But I think like if you have more people who are used to doing like condensed shows, like a person who's used to doing a series or something like that, where this is kind of like their wheelhouse, maybe they would execute it better because
Well,
they know the
possibly.
spacing of time that they have with this particular episode.
Well, I think
Whereas
it's
a film director is going to look at like, okay, I have, Kevin Feige is like, okay, I got this 3-hour Avengers movie and I got to tell the whole story in 3 hours. And he's thinking about all this versus someone who's like, okay, I have 45 minutes to get people here. What's the best effective way to do that?
yeah, but I mean, I think that, and so the solution to that would almost be how Obi-Wan was, right? Where it's one person directing the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
That would be how you would fix it if you want to go that route, because now you're looking at it like it's a 5.5 hour movie or whatever it is, right? I mean, because it's
Mhm.
just broken up into 30, 40-minute
Segment.
episodes or whatever. But I mean, if it's like a 6, 8 episode series or whatever, then you figure, okay, it's like a 4-hour film. It's just we're breaking it up into chunks. But then I think that would fix the problem that you're talking about, because now you would be thinking of the whole project rather than you're bringing in one person for the specific part, of the story. And you're right, I think, but again, the only thing that I would say that would negate it is you have had, like, one of the things that they would do with shows like CSI and stuff like that, they'd have all these, like, famous film directors come in and do an episode. Like Quentin Tarantino did a couple episodes. I think Martin Scorsese actually did an episode. They didn't have any problems. So I
They're
think
legends,
it's
though.
well, yeah, but I mean,
That's like Spielberg. I mean, Spielberg
no,
can pretty
but
much.
here's the thing:
He can
Lucasfilm,
direct a school play all the way
but
to
Lucasfilm could get those people. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You can get people of that caliber. They just,
True.
I don't know. Like, I don't know what they're,
because they see because they don't want their reputation tarnished. That's why.
well, no, I mean, there's
Because the way Lucasfilm is.
There's
been
well
handling
now, yeah, maybe now. It might be
Yeah,
it
that's
might
what
be
I'm
more
saying.
difficult to get these guys now than it would have been, say, in 2015. But still, I don't know. I think that you could, there's still enough, because people grew up with it. They want to do it. So David says, I miss what you all said about why you feel bad for the Acolyte actors. Well, we were just basically saying that a lot of it's poor direction. That it's not necessarily their acting ability. It's just when you're, you got to give the director what they want. And so if the director's going to direct you a certain way. Now, if you have enough clout, like when Harrison Ford infamously told Erwin Kershner, like, hey, Han Solo wouldn't say that. When the line was, I love you too. He's like, Han Solo wouldn't say I love you too. So he improvised the whole I know. And of course, everybody loved it. It's stuck. It's become like one of the most iconic lines. That's because he was Harrison Ford. Even back then, he had enough clout within the franchise that he could say those things. Not to mention that, Harrison Ford is cranky anyway. He was cranky back then. He infamously was talking about, even on the first Star Wars film, when he told Lucas, like, you could write this crap, but you can't say it.
Can't say it.
I mean, he was essentially always going to speak his mind. But a lot of actors either don't have that in them, or they just don't have the clout to where they can, you get some name actor, especially somebody who's like really respected. You get like Robert De Niro in a Star Wars project. He's going to be able to tell the director, no, I think we should do this. And at the very least, the director will be like, okay, well, just give it to me like this, and then you can do whatever you want. And they will actually take on the expense of shooting multiple scenes. Right. Of course, when you're doing everything on the volume, it's not like there's that much. But generally speaking, the more takes you do, things like that, if something's a little bit with a tighter budget. Now, as we know, The Acolyte basically costs as much as like Revenge of the Sith. So I don't think budget's necessarily the issue. In fact, a lot of people are wondering, where is the money going? But
I'm people.
But at the same time, yeah, you get somebody like a De Niro, Pacino, those kind of guys, like Denzel Washington comes in and does a Star Wars project. Yeah, he's going to be able to dictate to the director, like, you know what? I want to do this again, and I want to do it like this. Amanda Steenberg, whatever her name is.
Oh, Amanda.
It's like Stenberg or Sten. I don't know. Whatever. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Point is,
Amanda.
Yeah. Amanda is not going to be able to have that kind of clout.
Yeah.
She's not going to be able to do it. She just needs to be thankful that she's in a Star Wars film or project. That's the difference. And if the director's saying, hey, this is what I want from you, you got to give it to them. It's that simple. That's the director's in charge. You can argue with them, but you're going to ultimately lose because they don't answer to you.
Hmm.
So that's why I say you can't always blame the actors for some of the poor performances, because they may have been directed that way. And again, I point to the Phantom Menace. You had like Oscar nominated or Oscar winning actors that were giving these wooden, stiff performances. It's not the
Yeah.
acting.
Yeah.
You go see Natalie Portman, any of her other projects, and she's either nominated or winning awards. Then she comes to the Phantom Menace, and there's only so much you can do.
And white pants. Yeah, I mean, it's only so much the white pants can help.
Sometimes that's what you got to do. You gotta.
Did a white label it? You got to white pants it.
Well, I mean, the
But
funny thing too is that whole like little dominatrix outfit that she wore. It's like, geez, George.
Oh, yeah.
First the metal bikini, then the little dominatrix. I was like, all right, I see where you're going.
Yeah. See, he's going down a dark path.
I guess.
But,
well, maybe that's why we can't really make fun of bathing Sith when he's, going back on that. But I just have noticed that there's been like
it was just done better. I just want to say that.
Well, yeah, we would like it better because,
yeah, exactly.
It's women. I mean, I don't need to see a bunch of shirtless dudes running around.
All right.
I just think it's funny that it's always these Sith dudes.
Well, yeah, it's the bad boy image. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, I guess that's what they're trying to do. I don't know. Well, what'd you think about the whole, which is very reminiscent of the Anakin Vader thing, when she, lowers the helmet on her and you see the POV from inside?
Yeah, I thought that was cool because she was, once again, showing that curiosity. Like, he kind of left her with it, like, all right, try it, you'll see. And once again, he's constantly planting those seeds in her, no innuendo intended. But
well, I mean, besides the name checking cortosis thing, which I did appreciate, because I mean, we all pretty much thought that's what it was, but we weren't 100% sure. It was also nice that he was explaining to her how the helmet actually works and, what it does, and, the fact that it's kind of a sensory deprivation thing, because that was the first thing I thought of too. When she put the thing on, I'm like, how on earth do you fight in this thing?
I know, right? It forces you to rely on the Force, really.
I guess it's kind of like, now try it with this blast shield on.
Thing.
Nothing.
Right, there's no peripheral vision in that thing.
No.
It's got to be heavy.
Well, the other thing was, as soon as you see what it looks like from the inside and, how your view is, I had a lot more respect for the fight scenes than in the last episode. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Exactly. But then the other part about it, I love that he realized, like, he recognizes her power. Like, look, you have more power than you realize. And I'm really curious to see, like, okay, how powerful is she? Is she more powerful than her sister? Even though May is more, she embraces her power more. But Osha might be more powerful, almost like a Luke and Leia thing. We see Luke, he embraced not the dark side, but, the Force. And don't get me wrong, Luke was super powerful, but we come to find out that Leia was actually probably more powerful than Luke.
Yeah, she had more potential.
Yeah.
Obviously, she didn't. That wasn't really fully realized, but yeah, she definitely had more potential than he did. But right, he utilized it. And the same thing could be said. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I don't know. If we found that out, I wouldn't be disappointed, even though it is somewhat of a tried and true. It's like, oh yes, pretty much the more sort of meek, lowly, ends up being like super powerful or whatever. We'll see. I don't know.
What would you rate this episode?
Ooh, if I had to rate it, probably a 6. Maybe 7.
6.
Yeah, episode 6 for 6.
I'm gonna go with 6 as well. I think that's...
Well, then of course, after the rating, the question comes: what do you want to see next?
Well, definitely, I want to find out more about Saul and what the heck what happened on Brendok.
Yeah, that's my
I gotta know
thing.
that. But
they gotta
really
stop like Well, I'm just gonna say they gotta stop prolonging that. Next episode, I'm laying down the gauntlet. They absolutely have to deal with this whole what happened thing. They can't
Yeah.
keep bringing us along. Of course, it's the second to last episode too. So I mean, but I just think it's time. I think if they drag it out anymore, it's just going to be a little tiring.
Yeah, and then more with Osha and Kamir. Like
Yeah.
I want to see like okay, like they're more of their interaction with each other. And then what happens with like, if Vanessa eventually figures out like, okay, where Saul went.
Yeah, I would say all those are probably the priorities on my list too. Especially the Osha Kamir thing, because obviously the implication is that she's gonna go dark. I don't think that's gonna happen. But I would like to see a little bit more. Well, here's the thing: if given that little nugget that we had from the last time, right? That little, well, it was a long time ago. I'm a little, like a really long time ago. So basically, it implies that Kamir is way older than what we think or how he looks, which leads me to believe that Kamir's probably not even his real name. We're probably going to find out something stupid like he's Plagueis or something. You know what I mean? It's like he's going to be revealed to. I've often said that he's either the master and he's not who we think he is, or he's actually the acolyte and there's the real master that's pulling the strings. So I would like to see what happens with that. It'll just be really, really interesting to me. Let me get this comment in from David. He seems to have a little issue with our rating. He says 6. What show y'all watching? It was a 4. I can't tell where the show is going. Well, that's a legitimate. We complained about that earlier. You just missed it. This episode was so stupid. I don't know where the story is going now. Well, again, it's because look, we've been through this before. We know where the story. Well, we more or less know where the story is going. It's just we don't know the details and how they're going to get there and how cliche they're going to be. Because there's definitely the cliche Star Wars thing to do. And then you could stray away from that. As far as, because we brought this up, right? It's less like a series and more like a collage. More like just, like the May character, her motivation makes no sense. 1 minute, she wants to help and, she wants to tell the Jedi everything. And the next minute, she's like pulling daggers out and, she's working against them, wanting to kill them. It's like, okay, that's just bad writing. Her motivation is unclear and it's stupid. The part that is clear. So that's a legitimate complaint. They also don't really know the tone of the show. 1 minute, as David pointed out, you have this whole, Sith OnlyFans moment, and then the next minute, they're doing, this little kid slapstick thing where you get this little giant rat that's wanting to fight her or gerbil or whatever, and then, this robot squirts oil on her. It's like, what am I watching? What is this? I don't understand what this is. I mean, that scene was useless. It didn't even do anything. It was just supposed to be this little kid comedic thing. As you pointed out, it's much like the Ratatouille type scene in the Book of Boba Fett with the little chase around the kitchen that was just so stupid. It takes you right out of the show. It's like you have to decide, tonally speaking, what kind of show do you want to be and stick to that. And it's true. It's somewhat disjointed and all over the place. But that said, if I were to just tell you this story on paper or just say it, you'd be like, all right, that's kind of cool. It's just the execution that's bad. That's all. But we can hang with it because there are some good stuff in it. There are legitimately good stuff. Look, the last episode was incredible.
Yeah, I think it just depends on when they're focused on the story, it's good. When they're not, it's really bad. And I think that's kind of what I've noticed over the
Mm,
course of it all is that when you're sticking to the meat of the matter, I mean, I think they nail it home. Like the last episode, the meat of the matter was that big battle, and they really like won with that one. When we get to this episode, the the content of the conversations was really good because we got motivation, we got purpose, we got identity, we got all those things. But when we start getting away from that, when we're trying to, it's almost like they're trying to do too much, and when they're not doing the story, they're trying to be overly creative, and it's failing. As I
good.
always use the analogy, it's like when you know a musician or a vocalist will try to, instead of just singing the song and just adding just a little thing here and there just to give it a little pop, they want to go, oh, but I can do this amazing run right here, or I can play this riff
Right.
really cool, and it's like, but it doesn't serve the story nor the song, and that's what that's what we're continuously getting in this.
Yeah. And in a lot of cases, as I said at the beginning of the show, we have the ability to, if the story is engaging enough, we can overlook some of the other stuff because again, it's being a canon junkie, right? This is actually furthering a lot of the stuff. And Kamir is a very interesting character. He's different than any other Sith Lord that we've seen in the past. And you want to know more about him.
You know who I could see playing him? Like if they didn't have this guy, but I think who, like, don't get me wrong, I like the actor who's playing Kamir, and I like the way that he's playing, so I don't want to give that impression. However, I think I know that trips you out every time I say that. I think Johnny Depp. That's kind of like where they're going with that. He reminds me of like a young Johnny Depp.
And Johnny Depp Sith, yes. Darth Sparrow, as it were.
Darth, Darth Sparrow. It's hilarious.
Exactly. I mean, hey, it's fascinating to me, I think, where they're going. And I think that they're dropping clues. Because, like I said, before he was dropping clues that he was actually the guy and not just some sidekick or whatever. Now I think he's dropping clues that he's not who we think he is. And again, there's only 2 episodes left, right? Episode 7 comes out Tuesday. And that's gonna I think tell us a little bit what we can expect in 8. And I haven't ruled out what you said at the beginning of the show, and that could be that as clunky and clumsy as this has been, it could maybe largely be a setup season that then sets up a season 2 where the payoff will actually come. Or it's just clumsy and clunky. I mean, maybe there is no payoff, right? I mean,
that's very.
We'll see. And we don't even know how far away season 2 is. I mean, like I said, I'm quite certain there's going to be, it's like the second most streamed Star Wars show, at least, only behind Obi-Wan, which is a really weird choice because a lot of people were critical of Obi-Wan, too.
Yeah, no. Which, I mean,
you would have thought it would have been season 1 or 2 of The Mandalorian, but I don't know.
Well, actually, season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian was pretty dope. I mean, are you talking about as far as being like the number 1 show?
Mm-hmm.
I get what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, like the most streamed thing. I mean, David will be happy it wasn't Andor. Like, he might even rather it be Andor than this. Or we can split the difference and say Ahsoka, right?
Oh, now see, that's the one. Yeah. See, there you go.
Hey, whatever. But this is another episode down, so we hope you guys enjoyed this brief look at episode 6. Of course, next Sunday we'll be reviewing episode 7. Not really sure what's going to happen tomorrow. There'll be something. There's always something in Star Wars.
Always, yeah. There's always something. always two. There are.
Yes, exactly. So I'm sure we'll have something that we can talk about. So until then, hopefully you guys have a good rest of the week. Again, I'll be on Discord. Look, if you guys join the Discord channel. You can see we have plenty of discussions that go on there. I even jump on there and, we got like a Call of Duty lobby. So if you guys, want to jump in on that, you could do that. Of course, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and of course, hit that notification bell. That's always something that we always appreciate when you guys do that. There's obviously the buymeacoffee.com link that we've got if you guys want to support us that way. But again, just you guys watching, chatting, liking, subscribing, that really helps us out. So I guess we're going to go from there. So until then, I'm Eric Mansell.
I'm Darryl Sanders.
May the force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the force be with you, always.